an F1 league race tonight. I just want to thank this particular league for giving me the opportunity to do so. And also to James Owl 90 for putting me in contact with this particular league in need of a commentator. I have done bits and bobs of commentary before, but this is my first time with this particular league, so I'm a little bit nervous, but aside from that, I'm going to be commentating tonight. Hopefully I'll do a good enough job for you. So we're on board at the moment with JM in the Haas. Seems to be on the outlap. There's a few... Well, there's the majority of the field is out on an outlap. There's only 3 or 4 cars left in the pit lane. Let's see, can I find anybody actually on the... Right, there we go. So we're currently on board with JM. I'm going to keep you on board with JM for the time being. Running in the number 9 Haas car. As he comes through sector 1. A little bit of a twitch there coming out of the corner. Into that big brake zone there. Into sector 2 now. There's a yellow. There is a yellow in sector 3. Let's hope that this doesn't ruin the quali session for these guys. As he comes now into the chicane, gets there, gets a good exit, no twitches, onto the DRS. As you can see, the rear wing flap closing there as he brakes and turns in. Now coming through this last section of corners. Oh, this is the second to last corner. A little bit of grass on the entry and on the exit. Comes through that last corner. DRS open, and he has put it on 3rd place provisionally. Ooh, and just beats the Toro Rosso out of the pit lane there, which I believe was, if we can find who it was, that would be good. I'm just getting used to the new game. They've altered some of the colours. Lily white. So everyone seems to be putting in reasonable laps at this point. As you can see, the Alfa Romeo letting through, I think it was the Mercedes and the Williams. As we're on board now with Joe. He's coming through the last part of sector 1 into sector 2. He's currently on pole with a 1:22.7. There's a couple cars just letting him go through as he's on the flying lap, of course. Oh, we've got a full course yellow. We'll just go on board there, just above in the airbox. You can see he's coming right through those gears on the power, making sure he's not making any mistakes. Comes in, that's a nice line. Oh, just gets a little bit of a twitch, but regains control. That's nice. Through a DRS zone once more, into the heavy braking zone for the right-hander. That's nice. Now, the last couple of corners we saw that JM had a little bit of difficulty, and he's decided that that is enough. 1 lap is enough. He's on pole. He, well, provisionally is on pole, of course. Nevo in the Ferrari is provisionally 2nd. We've got Jammy Dodger in the number 21 Haas. Ooh, and he's gone in the gravel. Ooh, and that's going to be a spin across the circuit. And this could be interesting here. Yep, he's got that under control, luckily. I believe he may have been on his way into the pits anyway. Relvin has retired from session. Unfortunately, I didn't capture quite what happened. Now, who's on an actual timed lap here? I believe Luna is now on a timed lap coming through the DRS zone. Comes in. Nice line through there. Keeps it through there as Michel has retired from the session, I believe, driving the Racing Point. Oh, and Anthony has put it on pole with Reshka in second, Luna in third, Joe fourth, Nevo fifth. Nathan just in low fuel mode, limping it round. Melvin just allowing some of the other cars through there. I believe he may have also been in low fuel mode. And of course JM is back out on another outlap. Joe on an outlap. And welcome viewers. Trying to find somebody who's actually on a hot lap here. Yeah, let's have a look at Melvin. He was letting someone through at turn 1, so may have a little bit of grass on the tyres and probably a little bit more now as he comes through the end of sector 2. As you've seen the Haas there in the background. With the distinctive pink and grey helmet there in the Mercedes, number 98. Just coming through this last complex of corners. He's going into the pits. The car behind him isn't. And this is JM now. He's finished that outlap. He's going again, as he unfortunately just had a little bit of an untidy run through that last sector, which cost him some time. And oh, this is a big one. That's not done him any favours there. I'm sure he would have wanted to have got a nice, clean, tidy run through there, but that's definitely not helped. As I believe he's now turned his engine mode down. He's just gonna maybe bail out of this lap. Matt Maguire just coming into the second to last corner in the Red Bull. In the other number 9 car. Opens the DRS and comes through with a time of 1 minute 30, which keeps him in provisional 15th. Mini Godbold now, I believe, is on his hot lap with the black and gold racing helmet there in the Toro Rosso, as Joe has took another second off his previous fastest lap. And there's a Haas there, I believe that could be JM in the escape road. It's a good line from Godbold. Can he keep it? Yep, he's got it. Open to DRS on the home straight. What's he gonna bring? It's a 1:21.5, which puts him on provisional pole. As the track rubbers in, and therefore more levels of grip are available to the drivers. James Howell still in the pits. I believe Matt Maguire is out on another flying lap. Clearly feels he can improve on that 1:30. Oh, and he's just got that second to last corner a little bit wrong and bails. As James Owl now in the McLaren is finally coming out to do a hot lap. Well, he'll start with an out lap, followed by a hot lap, of course. Ooh, and JM also retiring from qualifying. Of course, James, a driver in the USR, and also the guy to thank for this commentary, as he put me in contact with this league. And just avoiding the hass there of JM, as he's just approaching traffic now, which you probably won't mind too much, as that's Chris in the other McLaren, and the fact that he's only on an out lap surely should serve him a little bit less worried than he would if he was on a flying lap. As we join Raza now in the Alfa Romeo, just coming through the end of Sector 2 onto the swooping double right kink almost before the chicane, as you cross from Sector 2 to Sector 3. And there we are into Sector 3, DRS open, brakes, keeps a very tight line. I've seen most drivers have been taking the slightly wider later apex, just avoiding the McLaren there, and in the pits he comes. On board now with Nathan in the Renault. Is he on a hot lap? There's a yellow in Sector 3, as Jazzy Jeff has done enough to keep him on provisional 7th. Luna J now retiring from the session. I'm not quite sure what Chris has done there. He's obviously going to be peeling off there into the pit lane, as we're on board with Lily. Keeps it nice and tight through the chicane. Nice and controlled. Opens the DRS. Crucially gets the car sorted out under braking. Paying tribute to the late great Ayrton Senna with the helmet there. And he or she also peels off into the pits. As I don't know a lot of these drivers personally, so forgive me if I make any mistakes. And Melvin on board the 98 Mercedes does seem to be in close proximity to, I believe that is James Owl, whose lap has put him provisionally in 6th for the time being. Whether it had held him up or not, I am not entirely sure, but we will find out. James has a reputation of being a reasonably quick and very clean racer. As Melvin there just peels off to the right to allow James through. And also the Alfa Romeo to come in the background as well. Keeps it nice and tidy, and into the pits comes James. Jammy Dodger there, just using the escape. Royster in this first sector. I believe this could be a proper lap time now, rather than an out lap or an in lap. He is only 11th provisionally, but he is on the medium tyre, which is a slower compound than the soft tyre, of course, which could provide an interesting tactical decision. Of course, 11th position should offer him free choice of tyres, maybe. I'm not sure if that applies to short qualifying or not. Probably should know by now, but as the Toro Rosso and the McLaren move out of the way. This is looking like a decent lap from Royster, who of course is actually on the soft tyres, despite it saying on board the telemetry feeds that he's on mediums. Yeah, and that has drastically improved his lap time. There, 1:22.4, which means the gap now between 3rd and 7th is a matter of 7/10. It's not a big gap at all. Whereas the battle for pole position is actually very, very interesting, with Joe in the Williams on a 1:21.7 and Mini Godbold on a 1:21.5, the current pole sitter, with about 10 seconds or so left of qualifying. A few cars now going slowly, probably finished their laps for the most part. And Jamie Dodger there returning to the pits, minus the front wing. That would explain why he peels off into the pit lane. As Lily White there, avoiding the other Toro Rosso, piloted by Mini Godbold, the pole sitter, who I believe has lost, is that the front wing end plates there? Yeah, a definite lack of downforce as he attempted to turn in there. He's lost some of the winglets as well from the right hand side of the front wing. End plates on both sides of the front wing as well. That won't do his downforce and grip levels any good at all. One can only imagine he must have had a slight twitch coming out of the chicane, and when he opened DRS, the car probably just snapped on him. And just coming in from race control, Melvin, I believe, has a 5-place grid penalty due to a collision with Matt Maguire. As Anthony just pushing, and he's just nudged above Joe. A 1:21.6 slots him in between Godbold and Joe. And I believe everyone now, bar Melvin, has finished their qualifying session. And this is looking like an in-lap from Melvin, as obviously we heard about the 5-place grid penalty coming through the race control feed at the bottom. Oh, and he's actually missed the pit lane there. That's shades of Lewis Hamilton at Hockenheim in 2018. And that concludes qualifying. Mini Godbold on pole with a quite frankly wonderful 1:21.5. Anthony in second. Joe starting third. Reshka starting fourth. Royster in fifth. Luna sixth. James Owl in seventh. Hazard in eighth. Nevo in ninth. Jazzy Jeff in 10th. Being followed by Jamie Dodger, Lily White, Chris D, Nathan, Melvin, Raza, Michelle, JM, Matt Maguire, and I didn't quite catch that last car on the grid. as I spent too long. Whoops. Not great. Need to de-rust myself on the old commentary. Apologies there if you heard a bottle opening. Just taking on some fluid to keep my mouth hydrated. Sitting and talking for a good couple of hours can easily take the moisture away. But the grid looks all set and ready now as the formation lap. It looks like everyone has got away cleanly. Just looking down the field, there's a Mercedes and a Renault. Relvin has not got away from the grid on this formation lap, and the Haas of Jamie Dodger has been placed back. I believe some people might just be giving up a little bit on the formation lap. As I can't hear the driver's communications, it is difficult to interpret. So we will stick for now on board with Mini Godbold, who is on pole, as it has decided that it is going to rain, which definitely throws a lot of excitement into the mix now. As qualifying, of course, being run in the dry, seeing differences in tyre compounds. But now they face a different challenge entirely with a damp and greasy circuit. Aquaplaning, understeer that could come from the aquaplaning. And of course the intermediate and maybe even full wet tyres at some stage. And on the contrary, it could also dry up at any point. As you can see now, all the cars returning to the grid, all tiptoeing around there, just trying to stay out of trouble, which is always a good thing to do on a formation lap. It should be interesting how they do with some cars already on the grid. As we get ready for the start of this race here at Australia at the Albert Park circuit. Getting ready now for the 5 lights. The drivers will be experiencing feelings of passion, focus, determination, hopefulness, all sorts of emotions and levels of concentration will be going through the head at this point. As the race is underway here, Mini Godbold gets away. It looks like a clean getaway for everybody. Oh, and there's been a crash. There has been a big crash there. I believe that is Lily White there, who's come off quite badly, as there's a lot of flying debris now. Oh, and the McLaren there and the Racing Point getting torn up, as there's there's a big cluster now. Big cluster of cars here. Nathan in the Renault there dropped a lot of places. Just Jazzy Jeff and countless others as we're on board now with JM. Oh, wheel to wheel there with Raza. as the wet conditions seem to have caught a few people out at the start of this race. The cars all jostling for position now as we head back to the front of the field, where Joe has pulled out a 1 second lead now over Mini Godbold. And Reshka now is being put under pressure there by Anthony, coming through the final complex of corners. Mini Godbold has closed the gap now, but he might have to start thinking defensively at some point, as Anthony now right on the back of Reshka, trying to get a good line. Reshka on a defensive line, Anthony following. James Owell there goes up the inside of Royster. Nicely done. A clean overtake. Some more debris from that lap 1 collision flying around everywhere. As Hazard there going, just tapping the back of Nevo. Just misjudged his braking point slightly, and he's now under threat now from Jamie Dodger in the Haas, who's just taking it a little bit more conservative there, as the Alpha of Hazard gets a dodgy line, and Nathan has a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. That's not ideal, as Jamie Dodger and Hazard are now wheel to wheel. Relvin is now starting to reel them in. Nevo is starting to push away from them. And Jamie Dodger there taking a trip across the grass, turning his Haas into a lawnmower as Relvin slots through in the gap. Jamie Dodger just a little bit of a loss of traction on the slippery curb. As we progress through the field, and Royster is still putting pressure on James, as I'm sure DRS won't obviously come into play due to the wet conditions. We're just going to stay on board with James for the time being, as Royster and now Nevo threaten to turn this into a 3-way battle for 5th place. And Mini Godbold has overtaken Joe, and Joe is in a wall, and that's going to be less than ideal for Joe there. He was looking in control of the race, a second in front, and a lot of people have slotted through there. Mini Godbold was in the grass there for a moment, as Reshka looking to come through and apply pressure there in that racing point. The distinctive pink liveried car. Anthony a few seconds behind them, and James about 2.5 seconds behind him. He's just managed to extend the gap to Royster just a little bit. Nevo threatening both Royster and of course James. Hazard just dropping back a little bit. Jamie Dodger and Relvin now starting to come into a decent battle there, and Joe, who of course was the race leader, obviously missing his front wing after hitting a wall. And Luna will overtake Joe as Joe goes into the pits, and that is sure to catapult him down the field just a bit. I believe he has replaced his front wing. As we go back to the race for the lead, Reshka is getting ever closer to Mini Godbold. Little lag spike there. But as you can see, the wet weather has caught a few drivers out. The track looking very difficult and greasy. But you can see that as we're now 4 laps in, there is a racing line starting to form that is slightly drier than the rest of the circuit. It'd be interesting to see whether they use that slightly damper side of the circuit to cool the tyres down a little bit further on into the race, of course, as tyre degradation is sure to play a part in this 29 lap race as we enter lap 5 now. And Nevo and Royster all about an equal distance away. Hazard there just about fighting off the advances of Jammy Dodger and Relvin. There's a yellow flag up in sector 2. It doesn't look like there's a major issue. Oh, I stand corrected. Nathan, his car seemed to just lose power. It's almost as if there was an engine or gearbox failure of some description, as his car just ground to a halt. Going through the field here, as you can see, Relvin and Jammy Dodger still locked in this battle. They've must have been battling away here for a good 2 or 3 laps. But the majority of the field settled down a bit. Oh, as Jazzy Jeff goes for the move around the outside. Matt Maguire squeezing. Oh, and there's contact there. Jazzy Jeff looked to pit manoeuvre Matt Maguire, who has lost part of his front wing there in the wall. And he had to take evasive manoeuvres there as Joe came through. Joe lost his front wing already so far in this race. And there's going to be some more evasive manoeuvres there required as Raza and Lily White have to avoid. And Chris now in the McLaren. And Michel in the Racing Point there. He's coming up with the momentum. As he gets slowed up there. But I wouldn't imagine Matt Maguire put up that much of a battle, but he does. Now, was that Matt Maguire just taking it carefully and Michelle just slightly misjudging it? Or was there any other forces at play there? One does wonder. But yeah, Matt Maguire is definitely going to need to go into the pits and replace that front wing. As JM, he had a similar problem like that in qualifying. Not looking like it's the best race for some of these drivers. As Mini Godbold looks like he's about to lap, he's just lapped Matt Maguire and he's about to lap JM as the blue flags come out. The cars all starting to spread out a little bit, with the exception of Anthony and Hazard. As Hazard there looking for that little move on the outside. Anthony peeling off into the pit lane here on lap 7. And a whole host of cars there coming through under the pits. James Owell, of course, has slowly but surely made his way up to 3rd place now. He's about as far away from Reshka as Royster is from him. So the gap's all starting to be equal, and you can see definite battle starting to form as Jamie Dodger now getting onto the tail of Hazard again. A battle which is proving quite fruitful in these early stages of this race. There's a yellow flag now in sector 3, which no doubt we will see the remnants of that. And Jamie Dodger now has accrued a multiple warning 3-second time penalty, presumably for corner cutting or track limits, as Jazzy Jeff there has been overtaken by Joe and Anthony there. Of course, Joe and Anthony both on fresh tyres out of the pits. Anthony on those fresh tyres has more grip and he dives up the inside there. Jazzy Jeff having absolutely none of it, but eventually has to wield that position. Anthony just has more grip and more pace on those fresh intermediate tyres. You can see a few drivers have pitted, but not everybody. As we go back on board with Jamie Dodger, just about keeping with Hazard. As everything just seems to be under control in this race. All the drivers now starting to either have found their rhythm or, of course, had to pit. And there's been a few events in this race already, as Jamie Dodger has now peeled off into the pit lane. As we just see Relvin coming through this last corner, open to DRS up, or he would if he was in qualifying, of course. That was my mistake. I forgot it was wet. And Luna J now with a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Jamie Dodger now just coming out of the pits, as we're on board now with Joe. Joe, of course, was in that top 2 or 3 on the grid, as he just moves to the outside, gets the move done on Melvin. As that little battle for 8th place is starting to the seeds are being sown for an epic battle. As we just go on to Melvin there, who has been overtaken now by Anthony, of course. Anthony on fresher tyres, who has jumped a fair few places now in the last lap and a half, as there is a yellow in sector 1 and 2, and that is for Luna J, who's moving slowly in that Red Bull. Looks as if he's got some kind of problem. Yes, he's lost part of the front wing, as you can see. Winglets and end plates missing from the right hand side of the that front wing. As I believe that was Reshka came through. And battle a little bit further down the field now between JM and Michelle. Matt Maguire there just moving out of the way of Anthony, or is that Nevo? Oh, he's lost it there as Royster had to, was that Royster or Melvin? Had to, well, one of the Mercedes anyways, had to take evasive manoeuvres at the very last second there, almost resulting in spinning himself. And Reshka has a time penalty now for multiple warnings. As has Luna J, he's got another 5-second penalty, and this is for speeding in the pit lane. Something which we may see a little sporadic dose of, as Hazard drops 2 places there. Joe coming through, and Nathan leaving the session as he became an unfortunate DNF a few laps ago. And Joe, after that nasty collision with the wall, is now starting to peel some places back and get himself back into the running for this race anyways. Although there is quite a sizable gap now to the next car on track, which is Nevo in the Ferrari. Anthony now closing down on Rolvin, coming through this opening part of Sector 2. The yellow flag's in place there as Toro Rosso moves out of the way, just slowly halting the progress of these two. Not doing Rolvin any favours there as he's desperately fighting off that Ferrari. And this could be the move. Yeah, Anthony gets the move done. He had the better run through the exit of the chicane, but Rolvin is coming back at him. But the gap there proving to be too big this time. We'll just stick with this, as there's a full course yellow, which I presume could be for cars moving slowly. And Anthony just starting to build that gap slightly, and the racing point there of Michelle has unfortunately DNF, so that would explain. Oh, and Luna J also, a definite collision of some variety, as Matt Maguire now, followed by Lily White in 17th and 18th, will get past. Oh, and that's a big one. The Red Bull of Luna J missing a wheel, and assorted debris all over the home straight is less than ideal, as James Owell there having to navigate both his teammate Chris D and Jamie Dodger there in the Haas. The lead cars just starting to struggle with traffic as we enter this kind of mid-section of the race. Luna J now leaving the session, of course. Bits of his Red Bull car still scattered about. The marshals really should pick that up. And here comes Royster now. He's just come past the Haas, which I believe that's Jamie Dodger, who's lost it. Jamie Dodger there in the wall, or was that JM in the wall? We're just going to go down the field to have a little look, and that was Jamie Dodger in the wall. Not a good day for the Haas guys there, which a problem all too familiar in the real F1 as well. As Rolvin is right on the back of Raza. Rolvin has been involved in a few juicy battles throughout the course of this race so far. Definitely been in the action in that mid-pack. Maybe a slightly slower exit there, but he is starting to gain the ground on the Alpha, potentially going for a move on turn 1. Will he get there? Nope, just hasn't quite got the legs. Oh, a switch there on exit. That could have been a nasty accident, but good car control to recover. And just perhaps running in the slightly wetter line to cool his tyres down a bit, as the track does look to be drying out. It looks to be brightening up a little bit. Not as much spray coming off the cars now. As you can see, reflections of sunlight in the wing mirror and coming off the side pod there of Relvin's Renault. And Relvin now sizing up the move on the slipstream. He's going to go for the ballsy move around the outside. Raza just keeping the pace there, just has enough to keep Relvin at bay once more. I believe the Toro Rosso that is following this battle is the one of Mini Godbold, who is the race leader, of course. James Owl now up to second. Royster in third. And I believe the previous incumbent of second place, which was Anthony, is just coming out the pits. Melvin, Jazzy Jeff, Raza also going into the pits, as does race leader Mini Godbold. Matt Maguire also pitting. And James Owl peels off into the pits as well. What will Royster do? Royster also peeling off into the pits. And Reshka is now on the hard tyres. Oh, just caught the wet curb, and that won't have done him any favours there, as I believe that is one of the back markers there just holding him up, but he still comes out just ahead of James Owl now, who has to overtake the Haas under the blue flag, of course, and catch up to Reshka and just try to really hold it all off. But it seems to have fallen into place for Mini Godbold, who has still kept a 12-second gap despite pitting. As the closest gap now, as Joe goes into the pits, is Melvin and Relvin, which an interesting tongue twister there. 3/10 or just a shade over 3/10 now separating the two. And Melvin on the softer compound tyres there, just has the momentum there and the grip with the soft tyres over the intermediates that Relvin has been running, as the track is now dry. Obviously, as you can see, there's really not much in the way of if I just go onto the tyres there, you can see most drivers now, you can see there's only Relvin, Chris, who are on the intermediates, of course. And Chris, I think, is just coming in, presumably to put the dry tyres on. And we'll just go and have a look and see what tyres he's gone for. He's opted now for the medium tyres, of course, maybe trying to take them all the way to the end, as that's his second stop. Matt Maguire, who's maybe not had the best of days. The same too for Lily White and JM, who seem to have had a few interesting problems. And Anthony there with a 1:36, setting the fastest lap of the race. That's Melvin there just overtaking Royster. There's a yellow flag in the final sector. Curious as to why. Believe there's a slow moving Red Bull of Matt Maguire there on the main straight. Raza there with the fastest lap, 1:34.3. As the track getting very quick now as it dries out, and of course the drivers gaining in confidence, becoming a lot braver with their overtakes, as illustrated there with Godbold dispatching the back markers now. Hazard and Relvin reigniting their earlier battle, with Hazard currently coming out on top. Joe C now with a 1:32.2 in the Williams car, who, as previously mentioned, was leading the race. Oh, and Jazzy Jeff there has retired from the session. I'm guessing he's collided with a wall. Looking for a car now in the final sector who could maybe give us an insight as to what's happened regarding the Williams of Jazzy Jeff, who was running comfortably in 11th place or thereabouts before DNFing. As Raza, of course, fresh off a fast lap a couple laps ago on these fresh soft tyres, sorry, not super soft. Slowly closing up on the other Alfa Romeo there of Hazard. James Owl there, just coming past. Is that the Renault of Relvin? Yeah, he's the only remaining Renault in this race. Relvin there, just receiving a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. As we're now down to 16 runners in the race. Once again, Hazard is the closest to another driver, being 2.2 seconds behind Royster at the minute. The Mercedes boys in 7th and 8th. Anthony currently in 6th. Joe in 5th as he continues his resurgence back to the front. Nevo in 4th position. James Owl in 3rd place in that McLaren. Reshka in the Racing Point in 2nd place. Mini Godbold, who has been quite dominant really for large parts of this race, taking advantage, of course, of the crash from Joe. He's really been in the lead practically ever since, and shows no sign of being caught. And Joe there, speaking of the devil, of course, sets the fastest lap once more. James Owl now with a 3-second time penalty for extending the track limits. It just seems like this is a particularly easy circuit, as Hazard is right on the tail of Royster, the Alpha versus the Mercedes on different strategies. As you can see, Royster has been on a 2-stop, whereas Hazard on a 1-stop, which may benefit Royster if he's got the fresher tyres. Mini Godbold, as you can see now, having his own pop at the fastest lap, as in stark contrast, the other Toro Rosso of Lily White has retired now from the race. Matt Maguire, of course, at the moment just being overtaken and lapped. I believe that is James Owl, who is just navigating his way past him. Blue flags means Matt Maguire has to wield, and he does sensibly. As he could easily use James as slipstream. Joe now fastest lap. It seems to be a battle between Mini Godbold and Joe for that fastest lap contest. As once again, the closest battle we have on the circuit as of right now is Hazard and Royster, as we return to the battle for 9th place or 8th place. Down the main straight, just gonna struggle, I think, to close that gap down, as Mini Godbold has taken a full second off that previous fastest lap to add again, as we now into these closing few laps of the race. Lap 21 now of 29. Mini Godbold holding a 16.7 second lead over Reshka in the Racing Point. And the only real battle that's going on at the moment is the one that you're seeing right now between Hazard in the Alfa Romeo and Royster in the Mercedes. As Royster has claimed back a good 3/10 this flat, which may serve him well, and he may be able to close up enough to get some kind of move done. Anthony now taking his swipe at the fastest lap with a 1:27.2. Now, can Royster close up to Melvin, who is roughly 20 seconds up the road, or is just going to be too much of a gap to make up in his last few laps? And more importantly, will he manage to stave off the ever relentless Hazard, who has been in so many battles today? With Relvin, with Jamie Dodger, with of course Royster, with Melvin, with Joe, with Anthony, with pretty much everyone on the grid has had a battle today with Hazard, which maybe signifies that Hazard, of course, has quite some prowess of wheel-to-wheel combat, as he's now starting to utilise that slipstream. Maybe he makes a move for the inside, just about sneaks through, and Royster had to wield there, as you can tell. But yet again, this does still seem to be the most entertaining battle on the circuit. Melvin there, corner cutting, 5-second penalty. And I believe Melvin has just pitted in, which promotes Hazard to 7th and Royster to 8th. And just moving through the grid, Mini Godbold there, just arriving on the back of that battle there with the with that Razza and Hazard and a few others. As James Owell still comfortably 4 seconds in front of Nevo, and still too far behind Reshka really to mount a challenge, barring any mistakes of course. As we go through the roster now, Relvin in another battle with Melvin. This is round 2, maybe round 3 actually, of these two. As the Renault of Relvin now starting to apply real pressure there, almost running into the back of Melvin's Mercedes. Of course, Melvin fresh from the pit stop. As we come through the fast sweeping chicane into the final sector, Mini Godbold there raising the stakes with a 125.4 as Relvin just making a move for the inside, had to wield, couldn't quite get it done. Maybe potentially looking to line up Melvin for another attempt here as we move on to lap 24 for these guys. Reshka now with the 3-second time penalty. There is going to be a lot of penalties at the end of this race to calculate. And I don't think that's necessarily the fault of the drivers. I believe the wet conditions really did throw everybody off. And Relvin now keeping the pressure on. Slipping back slightly, but still keeping his sights set firmly on Melvin. At this point in the last lap, he almost made the move count. And that looks to be a good run there for the Renault. But as explained previously, Melvin is on fresher tyres than Relvin. The softer compound rather than the medium that Relvin is running in the Renault. Of course, if DRS was in play, that would certainly help him get the move done, as he's less than a second behind. And just focusing onto another battle further up the field, as Joe has caught up and is now only half a second behind Nevo, coming through turn 1. This could get dicey. He's slipstreaming. Stays. Gets a nice run through the corner. Maybe potentially setting up a move into the fast chicane a little bit further down the lap. Or maybe a bit sooner by the looks of this. He's really heaping the pressure on as he moves to the outside. Squeezed by Nevo. Just excellent car placement from Nevo there to make sure that Joe had his attempt shut down. Joe there, a little bit of a corner cut through the chicane, and he's really rapidly approaching that Ferrari. He's not giving up. He's relentless in his pursuit. He wants that 4th place. He looked to the inside, lost the momentum slightly, dropped back a tenth or so, but comes back now onto the main straight. The slipstream should now carry him. And Hazard now with a 5-second penalty for ignoring the blue flag. Oh, it's dicey. Joe gets the move done. That is a consummate overtake there, and a great example of why being relentless and calm under pressure always gets the job done. Some excellent driving from both drivers there. And just to point out that Joe is actually the highest placed driver on the two-stop strategy. Probably an impromptu two-stop, as he had to pit once for damage. As I believe Anthony just pitted twice for tactics. You're looking at the other two stoppers being Royster, Melvin, Relvin, Razza, Chris, Jamie Dodger and Matt Maguire, who also had to pit for damage. JM on the one stop, but hasn't really had the pace in this race, unfortunately. He's looked a little bit in between a rock and a hard place at times. Struggled a little bit with those last 2 or 3 corners in quali, and it continued in the race as the wet conditions really flummoxed everybody. There's a Rovin there getting a 3-second penalty again for some track extension. Royster now, can he close the gap to Hazard? As there's now only 2 laps left. Correction, 1 lap left now, as Mini Godbold leads the field onto the 28th lap of the 29. Joe there with a 3-second time penalty, and with Nevo only 4 seconds behind, that could play a definite fixture here. But the gaps, for the most part, have been pretty stable throughout the entirety of this race. However, unfortunately, 5 drivers didn't quite make the end, and I'm sure they'll be feeling disappointed, but hopefully not downhearted, and hopefully they'll come back bigger and stronger in the next race. As we're just going to focus a little bit now on this battle a bit further down the field, as Jamie Dodger applying pressure to Chris, and looking to maybe go for the switchback with the faster line. He's in the slipstream there. Ooh, just seemed to back off a little bit, not the area you want to be overtaking in. Now he can pile that pressure straight back on. He should have the legs to complete the move after the chicane, or maybe even through this double kink. Oh, there's a little bit of bobbing and weaving there from Chris. There was a definite double move. Jamie Dodger with a better line. Out of the chicane, has the inside line. Just about gets that done cleanly. But the danger's still not over. Chris is there. We're just going to take a break from that battle for a moment, just to see that Mini Godbold, of course, pretty dominant in this race. I believe he still has the fastest lap. A pretty phenomenal display from Mini Godbold in the Toro Rosso. Brings home the victory, and with the fastest lap to boot, a 1:24.7. Well done that man. Well done that driver, I should say. Reshka in second, bringing it across the line now for a very decent second place. James Howell rounding off the podium in third. Joe is fourth. Nevo fifth. Anthony sixth. Royster and Hazard already crossed the finish line, seventh and eighth. And Rovin and Raza. Oh wow, that was a very, very close, almost photo finish between the Renault of Relvin and that Raza in the Alfa Romeo. And it looks like Raza just pipped him literally on the finish line. Not many cars left to cross the finish line. Jamie Dodger, of course, brings home 12th position. And Chris in 13th, sorry. And there we go. The race there complete. I hope you all enjoyed what has been an eventful race. I apologise for any mistakes made during the commentary. I'm still getting used to being back in the limelight of the commentary booth, and you can see there Mini Godbold holding the trophy aloft. A dominant performance all weekend from him. Reshka, well deserved second place, and James Howell, of course, did a nice drive there to get third place. The podium celebrations ensue. And I guess I will end this broadcast after I give you the final positions. Godbold in first, Reshka second, James third, Joe in fourth, very unlucky after hitting the wall when he was in the lead. Nevo fifth, Anthony sixth, Royster seventh, Hazard in eighth, Melvin in ninth, Raza 10th, Relvin 11th, Jamie Dodger 12th, Chris in 13th, JM 14th, Matt Maguire 15th, Lily White in 16th, Jazzy Jeff 17th, Luna J 18th, Michelle in 19th, and Nathan rounding up the field in 20th position. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the Australian Grand Prix. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been Napalm Rage Racing, and I hope you all enjoy. Enjoy your evening, and sayonara.